In this video, we're going to talk about JavaScript functions. So to get started, if you go ahead and go into your project folder, go ahead and go into the 11-functions folder, then in the start subfolder, open up main.js, and then in your browser, go ahead and open up the index.html page in the start subfolder, and when you do, you should see functions on the page. So a function in JavaScript is basically a block of code that's used to run a particular task. Basically, your function will be, and basically that block of code or your function will be executed when something calls it or invokes it. So as an example, let's say we have a web page that has a shopping cart, and this shopping cart would have a variable called cart total, and we'll go ahead and set that equal to 0. And as a user is interacting with our web page, they can add items to our shopping cart and they can remove items from their shopping cart. And this would result into us needing to update our cart total variable. And we know we can do this by adding another variable to our existing variable, and we can also subtract values from this existing variable to get a new value. So for one example, let's say we have another variable called item 1 price, and we'll go ahead and set that equal to 5. So to get a new cart total, we know we could take cart total and we could go ahead and set it equal to cart total plus item price 1. And this would in effect update our cart total price. However, we may need to do this operation n times in our code. So every time a user adds an item to the cart, we need to do this here. And so this is a great example of why we'd want to use a function. Because we can create a function to do this exact piece of code over and over and over again. And then all we have to do is invoke that function. So to create a function, we use the function keyword in JavaScript. And then after we do that, we need to name our function. So I'm going to call this update cart total. So then after you name your function, you need to do an open and closing parentheses, followed by an opening and closing curly brace. So this will give us our function. And then inside the curly braces, anything we place in here will be the lines of code that will be executed. So let me go ahead and do console.log, and we'll just say hi. So anytime we invoke our update cart total function, this line of code should run. So let's go ahead and save and refresh our page. And then what we can do is we can access our function here and we can invoke it from our developer tools here. So then to invoke our function, we can just do update cart total followed by an opening and closing parenthesis, and this will invoke our function. So you'll see that our function runs that line of code, and because we're not returning a value, our function returns undefined. So one thing to note is if you just write the name of your function and you don't actually do the opening and closing parentheses, then you're not actually invoking your function. Instead, we actually get the definition of our function. So that's why we have this information here. So as I mentioned, we can return a value from our function. So let me go ahead and return 1. So let's go ahead and save. Let's go ahead and refresh our page, and let's go ahead and re-invoke our function. So now you'll see our line of code executed. However, you will see that update cart total return the value of 1. And that's what this line here is. So in addition to returning values, we can also add parameters to our function. So parameters are a way for us to pass values to our function, and then we can use those values inside our function here. So you can imagine is when we want to update our cart total, we're going to want to go ahead and receive the price of our item. So I'm going to go ahead and add a parameter called item price. And then when we invoke our function, we can pass the item price variable as an argument to our function. And so an argument is the value that's received by the function when it is invoked. So then what I can do in here is I can do console.log, and I can log our item price. So now if we save and refresh our page, let's go ahead and invoke our function. And let's go ahead and invoke it without passing an argument. So you'll see that we're logging item price. And because we didn't pass a value, it is undefined. So if we go ahead and run update cart total again, and let's go ahead and pass 5, you'll see that we have access to that value in our function, and we can log that value here. All right, so now that we have the basics of functions, I want to go ahead and challenge you to actually go ahead and write our update cart total function. All right, so if you want to go ahead and pause the video now, you can go ahead and work on your solution. And when you're ready, you can come back to the video to see one possible solution. So to actually implement our update cart total function, what we can do is let's go ahead and remove our lines of code here. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and do cart total from our variable here. And we're going to go ahead and set it equal to cart total plus the item price. So then what we'll do is let's go ahead and remove this line of code here. Let's go ahead and come down here. Let's do console.log cart total. Let's go ahead and invoke our update cart total function. Then let's go ahead and pass it item 1 price. And let's go ahead and log our cart total after we invoke our function. So if we go ahead and save and refresh our page, you see that our cart total is 0, and then after we invoke our function, it is set to 5.